All right, day one of our field report. So excited. Branson, you ready, man?
I'm ready. Hey, look what I got. Look. Don't I look cool?
Branson, what are you wearing?
It's a mask, man. Just like the Red Comet, right? I mean, the cool people wear the mask. He was like the super cool pilot.
Branson,
I look just like him.
No, Branson.
What?
Bad Branson.
What? Why is it bad? It's a mask, man.
No,
all the cool superheroes wear masks.
These aren't superheroes, Branson. Okay, look. In anime, sometimes yes, masks are things they wear, but oftentimes the person wearing the mask is not a good person.
What, you mean like he's misunderstood?
And 9 times out of 10 in Gundam, they're really not a good person.
Oh.
And showing up for our first field report, you're going to get us fired.
Oh. Okay. So this is not dress like the job you want day?
Let's not do that today.
Okay. Haro, where'd you go? Here, Haro. Take this and put it somewhere. Okay. All right. How do I look?
You have mask hair.
Okay.
We'll fix it later. Let's go. We gotta go.
Lick this.
No.
In 1979, Mobile Suit Gundam was introduced to the world. But what is Gundam? Where do you start watching it? Join the crew of Shiro Base as they seek to discover Gundam together. Come and join the Gundam Watch.
Hello, Gundam fans and those who think they might be. Welcome to The Gundam Watch, episode 001. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dallas. I'm so glad you guys have hit the play button. We listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you found us. Hey, welcome to the show. I am joined with me by my amazing, talented co-host, Mr. Unmasked Branson Boykin.
Hello. Yes, I am unmasked because I am not the bad guy of this show. Let's make that clear. I may be new, but I'm not evil.
Thank you, Branson, for not being evil today. I appreciate that.
You know, I try really hard.
And you do so well. Oh my gosh. Ladies and gentlemen, this is our inaugural episode officially of the Gundam Watch, where Branson and I are taking time to go through not the entire series, but as much as we can of Mobile Suit Gundam to discover what's happening with Gundam. What's the show about, the background, the history, and we're coming from very different perspectives. I'm an experienced Gundam fan. I've been watching Gundam for 23 plus years and discovering every day that I probably need more hobbies. And then Branson here is a noob. He's new to Gundam.
Very new.
So if you guys
new that I wear masks to mission briefings. Apparently that's a bad idea.
Yeah. I'm glad you took that off before the High Council today. So, so here's the deal, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to know more about why Branson and I are doing this, make sure you check out our last episode where we kind of discussed all that. That being said, today, ladies and gentlemen, we're jumping into a 3-part series. It is the 3-part movie series that summarizes the original Mobile Suit Gundam series from 1979. Branson, are you excited about today, bud?
I am. I'm very excited. I've been looking at the little character that you've got for me that I've set up in the viewing pod, and it looks cool. So I'm eager to see what it looks like when it's actually in action and, doing giant robot-y stuff.
Remind me to get you a Gundam marker so you can panel line that thing.
I understand none of what you just said.
And I can't wait for you to understand what I've said later.
Okay.
I just believe that you're going to become a fan. So That being said, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, we're looking at a 3-part series. Now, Branson, I want to explain something that we're looking at here before we go into our viewing pods to watch it. This condenses an entire series into 3 movies.
Oh boy.
Now there's like 49 episodes.
Wow.
In this first movie that you and I are about to watch, was it compresses episodes 1 through 13 into 2.5 hours.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
So this is going to be like watching it on fast forward.
kind of similar. If you look up the Gundam wiki page, it says that this was a 1981 Japanese film directed by Yoshiyuki Tomino, Tomino is the guy who created Gundam, in Fujiwara, and animated by Sunrise. This is a compilation movie of Mosu Gundam movie trilogy. And again, it's episodes 1 through 13 of the entire series. So going into this, it's going to be interesting because, Branson, there's going to be a lot of things that are left out. And there's going to be some gaps there that we may have to talk about after we watch this together.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to read the synopsis, and then I think we're going to jump into it. Are we ready for this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, here's the synopsis of what we're about to watch. In the year 0079 of the Universal Century, the war between her Federation and Principalities of Zeon have reached a stalemate. However, when Zeon learns about the Federation new mobile suits being developed at the Side 7 space colony, Shar Asmo launches an attack to destroy them. A boy named Amuro Ray finds himself caught up in the conflict when he becomes the unwilling pilot of the Federation's new mobile suit, the Gundam.
Cool.
All right. Any questions before you go into the pod?
Not now. I might have them once I'm in the pod, but I'll just bring them out with me.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Branson and I are going to the pod, and before we start the movie, we're each going to give our expectations of what we got coming into the movie. So, Branson, let's do this thing.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, in the pod. This is nice and comfortable. Ooh, I got a taco holder. Yes, let's go. I'm so excited to start this podcast. Oh, man. I hope Branson is having fun over there in his pod. All right. So, getting the movie in, ready to go. So, man, I just realized it's been a long time since I've actually seen this movie. So, from what I remember, again, this is 70s animation, so I can't expect modern day action pack. There's a lot of, they told stories different back in the 70s. So I'm going to have to just kind of relax. I know that in this movie, they chopped up a lot of the filler so that the story moved a little quicker, but I should expect a little bit of dryness to the storytelling. But I'm super excited to get into this. A lot of love for the original Gundam simply because of the groundwork it laid out. So I'm having to go with that mindset, but I'm not expecting miracles. This isn't going to be the greatest film ever. It's probably going to be a little bit slow at times, but I'm really hoping to this ignite some excitement for the rest of the podcast, especially for people listening to it right now. All right, enough said. Let's get into it.
Okay, sitting in the viewing pod, getting ready to watch the first movie, Mobile Suit Gundam 1. Okay. Oh, taco machine. Okay. I wonder if it makes quesadillas. Let's see. Well, while I'm sitting here looking for the quesadilla button on the taco machine, let me talk about my expectations. I guess, given the age of this movie, based on what I've experienced, I'm guessing that it's going to be kind of like Voltron without the magic. Like if you took out the Robeasts and that Hagar witch lady and things, and it was just the robot lions fighting a bunch of spaceships. That is what I expect Gundam to be. I expect there to be a laser sword, mostly because the miniature Gundam suit that Dallas got for me that's sitting here in the viewing pod has a laser sword. I'm actually really excited about that. I expect the heroes to be very young, like teenage, early college age, just because that seems to be the trope for a lot of animes. The hero always seems to be a teenager or someone very, very young. The bad guy is probably going to be wearing a mask. A lot of the animes I've seen, the bad guy wears a mask, either because he's horribly disfigured or because it looks cool. Let's see. Still can't find quesadillas. What else do I expect? I expect the hero to have a lot of big emotions. I see that a lot in animes. There's always these really big emotional moments. Sometimes they're over serious things. Sometimes they're over silly things. I don't know. I guess that's all I know to expect at this point. I'm sure as we progress through these movies, I'll know more of what to expect. But right now, that's what I've got. Voltron without the magic, teenage heroes, laser swords, and bad guys wearing masks. And it doesn't look like there's a quesadilla button on the taco machine. I'm going to have to talk to Haro. Am I saying his name right? Haro? Whatever his name is. I'm going to have to talk to him about installing a quesadilla button on this. Okay. Getting ready to press the play button. Here we go.
All right.
Wow.
Oh man. Wow, that was a fun trip.
Yeah. That was something. I gotta admit, I was a little overwhelmed. That was it felt like 13 episodes crammed into one because it was a lot of information all at once.
This
kind of makes me want to
what-
go back. Kind of makes me want to go back and watch the series so I can take this off in bite sizes.
I'm glad you said that because that was one of my actually the worries I had of us doing it this way. This was actually one of the things people warned about. Is there is so much data compressed into a singular movie. It can be overwhelming. So I'm a bit weary about how you're going to come out of this today. Liking the series. This may be our final episode, ladies and gentlemen. This may have just been too much for Branson. His brain may be melting right now. I don't know. We're going to find out momentarily.
It's not melting. I took off a big bite of the elephant, so I need to chew for a while.
You did take off a big bite on the elephant. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get into the conversation about this movie. What did we watch? What did we like about it? What did we not like about it? We're going to try to there are going to be spoilers just because there has to be for this conversation. But I want to encourage you guys to maybe check out these movies. These movies are available on various platforms. I know they're on Netflix right now. If you want to watch the series itself, the whole series is available on Crunchyroll, maybe YouTube or Gundam.info. I'm not sure. I have to check that. But I do know that they are on Crunchyroll right now.
Very cool.
Branson, where do you want to start, bro?
I would like to start with just the utter massive scale of everything in this show.
Yeah.
Everything was huge.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the ships, the space stations, obviously the mobile suits themselves, but it was almost overwhelming at how huge everything was. Like when they when they were talking about how the war started at the very beginning and they were panning over the scenes of the space stations like Side 3 and Side 7, the station is so massive that there is atmosphere in it. Like when you're at street level and look up, you see blue sky.
Right.
Not the other side of the station. You see blue sky.
Right.
And just the scale of it, the last time I remember reading or seeing anything that discussed that kind of scale was years ago when I read a guy who basically wrote a sequel to the H.G. Wells' The Time Machine.
Right.
And in that, he described a space station that circumscribed the moon, or maybe it was the sun. But anyhow, it was so huge, then it was nighttime, and the guy looked up and saw the stars in the sky, and the person that he was with said, "Those aren't stars. Those are the city lights of the other side of the station."
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So even that was not to the scale of this. And we were talking a little bit in the show when the Zaku suits kind of dropped down, and you had made the comment, well, these massive suits drop down stealthily, it's like someone trying to sneak up on someone in a tank. But if you have a station that is so big that on one side you look up and see blue sky, not the other
Yeah.
side of the station. I could see how something massive could drop down
Mhm.
and the populace not even know about it
Yeah.
because it's that massive. And then of course you have just the station where the White Base, the ship,
Mhm.
which that was a question I had. Is it White Base or Trojan Horse?
So White Base is the name of the ship. The code name is Trojan Horse.
Okay, so that was a Xenon code name.
Right.
Okay, because it took me a second to realize that when they talked about Trojan Horse, they were talking about the ship.
Right.
But just the massive size of that, I mean, everything was huge.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it created a sense of atmosphere.
Yeah.
It created
Literally.
yeah, yes, it literally created atmosphere. But I mean, even when you watch something like Star Trek or Star Wars, and it's all about exploration, things are more compact.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this was not compact.
Right.
This gave the impression that they had been living in these colonies for generations.
Close to it. They've been in these colonies for about roughly 79 years.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
still not as long as Star Trek, but still it felt gigantic.
Yeah, totally.
And in a way that I don't think any other property is gigantic. I mean, even in Star Wars, when they have an entire planet that's just a city, it
Mhm.
didn't feel this big.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was
the-
really impressed by that.
I'm glad you bring up the vastness, how big this colony is, because it brings into perspective the opening lines, which again, now my version in my pod was in Japanese. Was yours in Japanese?
Yeah, it was Japanese with subtitles.
Okay, so it's really easy to miss it, but it kind of lays the groundwork for everything. This takes place amid what they call the 1-year war, and at the beginning, 1 month into it, half the Earth population dies because they dropped a freaking colony on the planet.
Right. Yeah, I saw that.
And so that's how I'm getting, when you think about how big these colonies are in space, they create extinction level events on the Earth when they crash.
Right.
And so,
Right. That was
again-
another scene that burned in my head, was seeing that massive ship
Mhm.
just crash. And I mean, and you can see how huge they drew it, because you see the city skyline that it falls on looks like grass on
Right.
the ground. So these are skyscrapers that are a blade of grass.
Mhm.
And this huge thing falls, and everything was just so over the top, and not in a bad way, just massive, you
Mhm.
know.
It gave
And,
gravity to what was happening, to the sense of,
Yes.
again, this is a war. This is a mega war that's taking place right now.
Right. And that kind of ties into when we first see Amuro. Did I say that right? Amuro?
Yeah.
I'm going to butcher these names. I apologize. When we first see Amuro, and when we first see him like jump in the Gundam suit and pilot it, throughout most of that entire sequence, he looks like he is very overwhelmed.
Mhm.
Oh my gosh, this is crazy. And I liked that because, I mean, obviously he's the protagonist, he's the hero of the story, but he's not acting heroic.
Right.
He's not saying, it is my job to go and defend the colony against the evils of the Xenon. I mean, no, it is, oh God, I got him in the cockpit. Here's the instruction booklet. Where does this button do? Oh God, he's going to shoot me. Now I got to shoot back. Oh crap, I'm out of ammo. Let me. I mean, he constantly felt overwhelmed like the
Yeah.
entire time. And in fact, there's one scene I remember specifically. It was I don't know if it was the first fight or a later fight, but he comes out of the cockpit and starts walking to his room, and everyone's congratulating him on a job well done.
Yeah.
Hey, you beat him. You did good. I think it was his first time he fought the Red Comet.
Mhm.
And he's just staring at everyone with this blank stare on his face. Like, he's not saying anything to anyone. He just goes and he walks into his room, collapses on his bed, and just
Mhm.
starts sobbing.
Yeah.
And you see how utterly overwhelmed and not prepared for this he is.
Right.
And I think making everything so massive, it plays into that. You know,
Mhm.
literally the ground he is walking on is being destroyed by enemy invaders. Not
Mhm.
just, there's guns. Like the site is about to blow up,
Right.
you know, and so the scale of the environment helped play up just how overwhelmed he felt in this new situation,
Right.
and
Which is
it
just
played
great
into that.
storytelling. I mean, that's just like everything
Right.
builds onto it. And within these first, what I would call the first story arc really is the escape from Site 7 of this whole, he's overwhelmed. This is a child. And that's the great thing is you have this great landscape. And then you and I, the audience, are really put in place to experience this through the eyes of Amuro. And then even some of the other novices who are joining White Base at the same time. Everyone is thrown out of whack because this is such a massive ordeal taking place for everybody.
Right. And I like, and I forget exactly where in the movie they talk about it, but the older officers keep talking about these are children. You know, your crew is made up of children, and Lieutenant Bright, the guy who kind of becomes captain by default,
Right.
he basically says, well, yeah, they're kids, but there's nobody else.
Right.
The reason they're part of this team is because there's literally no one else to do this.
Right.
All of the other pilots, the captain, everybody's dead. and I liked that because that separated it from I'm going to make up a term here. It's not an actual term, but the Power Ranger syndrome.
Yeah.
This whole idea of, teenagers are totally okay with, stepping up and fighting in a war. I mean, they do that all the time, right? That was one thing one of the few things I enjoyed about that mature Power Rangers fan film that they did was they approached it from, you take a bunch of teenagers, weaponize them, and throw them into an intergalactic war. What do you think that's going to do to their psyche?
Exactly.
And Mobile Suit Gundam dives straight into that. You see the kids, some of them are cracking jokes just to deal. Some of them are retreating within themselves. Amuro can't decide from one second to the next whether he even wants to be a Gundam pilot.
Right.
But you feel this, I'm just a kid. I'm not supposed to be able to deal with this stuff.
Right.
And it's getting flung on me and I can't say no. Right. I can't say no, thank you.
Now, what's interesting though, is that this is also coming from a culture where maturity is expected on the young very quickly. I saw a news story a couple years ago about how in Japan, it's not uncommon for you to be on a railway, on a subway, and look over and see a 5-year-old by themselves going to school and just doing stuff because it's expected to them. You just do this. Now, again, Japan has a very different culture. They have a very different social structure. I'm not sitting my 5-year-old out on the streets of Shreveport.
But, me neither.
So it's very different. But at the same time, there is a level of, we expect you to be mature and take care of things. And what's interesting is I feel like Tomino is looking at this and going, yes, we have this mindset, but these are still children. And we have to remember, this is 1979. We're only 30 plus years removed from the events of World War II.
Right.
And so he's coming on the back end of people who grew up in during the American occupation time frame. He's heard stories from his grandparents about, other older relatives who were enlisted into the Empire's military force and all these other things. Yeah. And so he's looking at it, he's like, yes, mature, but understand the gravity about the war, about what war does to children themselves.
Yes. And you definitely felt that. I mean, I was right there with Amuro when he was like walking down the aisle and people were talking to him and trying to tell him, hey, you saved us all. And he's like, I don't want to deal with it. Just leave me alone. I'm like, man, I understand. I'm right there with you. Go sit in your corner and have yourself a good cry. We'll check on you later. I mean, you know, dang.
It's crazy. Now, one of the things that we missed out in this version is there's a lot of cutscenes that took place where Amuro has conversations with Bright and other people about his responsibility to pilot the Gundam for the sake of the fact that you're in it, you're doing it, get it done.
Yeah.
And there was some back and forth where even Amuro was like, I'm doing this. And then you see him later going, I don't want to do this. And you don't really see the conversation take place where he's like, I'm doing this. Leave me alone, Bright. I got this. And Bright's going, if you got this, then own up and do it, man. Walk this out. Which I think is it missing those scenes kind of, it throws off that scene later where Bright slaps Amuro around. Now, some people will look at that and go, man, that's just child abuse. At the same time, I feel like that's culturally, not just culturally, but time period wise, how you handled a soldier who was going through shell shock, which is what Amuro was doing. Not healthy. I mean, we're talking about PTSD.
Yeah.
Not the best way to do it, but it was the only way to shock them out of the shell shock.
Well, Amuro did the same thing to Frau when her mother was killed at the very beginning of the movie. She was tripping out, and he was like, we don't have time for you to trip out. You're going to die unless you get on your feet and go.
Exactly.
So, I didn't get the impression that was I'm irritated with you, so I'm going to beat you around.
Right.
It was I need you to focus because we're going to die.
And
the only way I can do that is to create physical pain so you have something to focus on besides the bodies that are next to you.
Right.
So yeah, I totally get that. And again, like Bright said, we're in this. You don't have time to freak out because if you don't do this, we're dead.
Right.
We're dead. I did appreciate that Amuro struggled with pulling the trigger on Char. Like he had him dead in the sights. Char, excuse me. I'm telling you, I'm going to butcher these names. But I mean, he's got him dead in his sights. All he has to do is pull the trigger. And he doesn't see the mobile suit, the Zaku suit. He sees the man piloting it and he hesitates. And I think that informs why his mother freaks out so much later in the movie when he shoots a Xenon soldier trying to protect himself.
Yeah.
And she's like, what did you just do?
Right.
Because at that point he's been conditioned. He's like, okay, this is war. This is the enemy. But you see why he struggled at the beginning and possibly where he got that mindset of why he struggled to pull the trigger is because his mother is very much all life is sacred. I don't care if they're the enemy or not. You don't kill people.
Right.
And that was actually a very heartbreaking scene, knowing what Amuro went through to get to that point, knowing that he was motivated by trying to protect himself and his family, and his mother to say, I'm ashamed you're even my son.
Right.
Which
that is a heartbreaking thing. And that actually took me back. That I couldn't help but think about the men who came back from Vietnam, men who went with the mindset, I'm doing something to serve and protect my family. It was a disaster. And I'm not promoting what took place in Vietnam at all. But these men, most of them did not go there because they wanted to be these savage animals. They were going with the mindset, I'm protecting my family.
Right.
And they come home and they're treated like, what's wrong with you? I can't believe this is, you do this. And for me, watching that, Amuro, that was another point for Amuro to solidify himself of, I'm doing this, even though people don't appreciate it. I have to do something for the better of other people, even if they don't understand it, which is a huge, I think it's a growth point of his.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a moral standard that I wish more people had, of going, sometimes we have to do hard things for the betterment of other people, even if it's unpopular.
Right. Absolutely. Especially both of us being believers.
Yeah.
Sometimes doing what is God honoring, doing what is moral, doing what is in line with Scripture does not make you popular.
No.
And especially these days, more than just you're a goody two shoes. But there are people that have a very strong negative reaction to people of faith.
Absolutely.
And, so yeah, I definitely connected with that.
Yeah. Man, there's just so much, and this is and for listeners, this is going to be the struggle for Branson and I going forward with these first 3 episodes, is because there's just so much took place. Let me ask you this, man. We hit hard and heavy with some deeper conversations, but let's back up a little bit.
Okay.
What'd you think of the Gundam?
The suit itself? Oh man. I thought it was cool. I had to laugh that Amuro literally like jumped in the cockpit with the instruction manual. And that's how he was piloting the thing.
Right?
That was a, if you ever want a lesson of how important the instructions are, here is a lesson right now. Dude took out 2 Zaku suits and all he did was read the instructions.
Yeah.
I got very, very strong Voltron vibes, which I said in my expectations. I kind of expected this to be Voltron without the magic. I don't think that's really an accurate description anymore because it doesn't capture the scale of what this is.
Right.
But seeing the suit fight in and of itself, thing's got a giant lightsaber. and that's just cool. He reaches back and pulls it out. And like I said, I knew it had I knew it had a laser sword because the model you got me has one. And then he had that big shield, and I'm like, it's a suit of armor.
Yeah.
It is a giant suit of armor, and I'm like, this is cool. This is cool, and I like that it's not a sentient thing.
Mhm.
I like that, and I think I made a note of this somewhere, or if I didn't, I should have. Like I said, Amuro is obviously the protagonist.
Mhm.
Because he's the main pilot for the suit. So what I liked about Amuro is that he doesn't have this chosen one vibe.
Mm.
He has a job that he was just in the right place in the right time.
Right.
I like that the suit isn't sentient. That means that anyone who jumps in the cockpit, that thing's going to get piloted.
Right.
That what made Amuro special is just coincidence. It's the fact that he was at the right place at the right time.
Right.
And nothing against the chosen one stories where, like I said, with like Voltron, only you can pilot the Lion because it chose you or whatever. I mean, those stories are cool.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get inundated with that idea, it's nice to have a story that, well, the reason I'm piloting it is because I was here and no one else was.
Right.
So that was cool. I love seeing it in action. I mean, it was just good sci-fi fun. I mean, that's the thing. We're going to get in these giant robots and fight each other.
Right.
And I mean, I'm guessing at some point somebody made a video game about this series. They'd be stupid not to.
There were several Gundam games out there. Not all of them good.
Yeah.
So interesting thing about the suit itself, you'll hear them several times call it referred to as the white mobile suit or the white devil. Originally, it was supposed to be purely white. Tomino had this mindset of this vision of it just a pure white robot, and basically toy companies were like, no, we need to sell toys, and so
right, we need it to be attractive. Yeah. I find that most of my childhood started with, we want to sell these toys, we need a show to go with it. Transformers,
He-Man.
Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future, He-Man, G.I. Joe. I mean, all of it was, we want to sell the toys, let's make a show.
Exactly.
Cool.
So what'd you think of, you've mentioned the Zaku several times. So we only actually, if I remember correctly, only see 2 mobile suits that the enemies have. You have the Zakus, which come with your standard green, or if you're Char, red, pink.
Yeah.
And then you have the Goof, which is piloted by Ramba Ral at the end of the movie.
Right.
What'd you think of those machines?
I very much appreciated that they look vastly different from the Mobile Suit Gundam, so that you can tell these are created by 2 different cultures, 2 different technology sets, 2 different sets of resources. I really liked Rawl's suit with the electro whip.
Yeah.
Excuse me. That was cool. I enjoyed watching him fight. I mean, Char's suit was cool, and I get why it was pinkish because he's the red comet. Okay, yeah. But other than the color scheme, that's the only thing that seemed really different than the other suits.
Right.
And Obviously, he was faster with it because Amuro kept trying to shoot him and he kept jumping out of the way at the last second. I don't know if that's because his suit was better, if he was just a better pilot, but Rawls' suit was neat because I like that the concept of that electro whip thing, how he can like, just crack it and bust his shield up or tie it up around him and yank it in, do the whole scorpion thing, get over here kind of thing. It was, I really liked Rawls' suit.
What I find interesting is the suits are not the suits, but the pilots themselves. They're different. It doesn't seem like they're all just like stock pilots. Like
Right.
Raul is very much a different type of archetype of character from Shar. Sometimes in
Yes.
the series, it's like, okay, all the bad guys are the same, and they really worked hard to make it not that way.
Yeah.
Shar seems to have his own motivation about things altogether, maybe or may not line up with Zeon. And
Mhm.
then, which we find out later, it's not in
Yeah.
this movie. And then Ramba Ral, he seems very much the proper general, but a
Yeah.
gentleman at the same time.
Yeah, he was a gentleman fighter, exactly, and maybe that's why I liked him as a character so much. He
Yeah.
was technically the bad guy, but he was like, like I read a story one time about two medieval kingdoms who were warring, and the general of the opposing side died, and news was brought to the king of the other side. Hey, this general that is your enemy has just died. He's been killed in battle. And instead of celebrating the win, instead of saying, yeah, he stopped what he was doing and had everyone at the dinner table toast the man and
Mhm.
say, we were on opposite sides of the battlefield, but you will never meet a more honorable, respectable man, both on and off the battlefield. And the world is a worser place because he is no longer in it. And this is a guy, they were at war with each other.
Right.
Like if they saw each other on the battlefield, they would literally try to kill each other. But when he dies, he mourns. And that's the kind of impression I get from Raw is he's that kind of guy,
Mm-hmm.
Which to the point, one of the things, and normally I don't like this. I'm a classic comic book fan. I like my villains to be bad guys. I occasionally like the sympathetic villain story, especially if it's a redemption story. I love seeing bad guys become good guys. But for the most part, bad guys wear black hats. They want to take over the world because they're just evil, that kind of thing.
Right.
That's not what you get in this movie.
No.
The Zeon was the antagonist. Yeah, they were the guys who were set against the main character of the story, but there wasn't a lot that made them evil.
I mean,
especially
they did drop an entire colony on Earth.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, the Federation is shooting their ships down. I mean, it is a war. War's got to have two sides, like for example, when and again, Dallas said before, lots of spoilers. When Garma dies,
Mm-hmm.
and you see the nation mourn, like the head emperor or whatever, Garma's father, like I almost felt bad for him. Like he was sitting there and he looked sad.
Mm-hmm.
And again, Raul, a gentleman warrior. He's on the wrong side of the fight, but I find myself liking it.
Mm-hmm.
So Xenon is the antagonist, yes, but there is actually very little in the movie to make me feel like they were a villain.
Right.
It genuinely felt like they were just the opposing side of a conflict.
And this is the great beauty of this series, and I would say the franchise as a whole, is you get these interesting looks into both sides of any conflict.
Mm-hmm.
You can find these archetypes that take place within any conflict, and specifically within this realm. Garma's motivation for going into battle was to get the approval of his family so he can get married.
Yeah.
That was his whole ordeal. And then the tragedy of it, like what's like Shar has his own motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And we discover that for whatever reason, we don't know why yet, he has angst against the Zabi family.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know why. But we know that he sets up his friend Garma to die. And he's just like, hey.
So that was a question I had, and I kind of missed it. But my question was, Char knew that Garma was going to die, like, because Char kind of goaded him into going. Like,
Right.
he even said, "Hey, I know that you would want to do something like this, so I'm deliberately not involving myself to give you a shot at it."
Mm-hmm.
And I, again, whether it's because I was trying to read everything, sometimes the words on the screen were going by faster than I could read, but because they were all speaking Japanese, I wasn't also hearing what they were saying.
Right.
But it felt like to me like Char kind of knew Garma was going to his death, and that was kind of the whole point. So you're saying that I didn't misread that. That was the way it was supposed to be. Okay. Yeah. Which is frustrating because I also appreciate Sayla as a Federation character, and their brother and sister apparently.
Yes.
So we found that out. Well, I mean, at the very beginning when he's on side 7 and they look at each other and she's like, "Oh, my brother," or whatever. So
She questions that though. Like, it's like, is it her brother or is it not her brother? At this point in the movie, in the series, she goes, I think he's my brother, but she's not entirely sure just yet. And in the next movie, we'll get confirmation. Spoiler alert.
Okay. Okay. Got you. All right. So yeah, I mean, so I guess really Char is the only one that seems truly villainous, but the Xenon soldiers themselves, they just seem very patriotic. Like you said, Garma, I think Garma even tells his fiance, he says, if I go and I'm not successful, then I'll just stop being a zombie.
Yeah.
So I can marry you anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, he's trying to do the honorable thing, but he resolves himself. If I can't do this honorably, then I'll just marry you without my family's wealth.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it was that whole needless death, you know, and,
I'm going to tell you this, the longer we get into this, Char's story, you will have some sympathy for his story the further along we go.
Yeah. Cool. So, yeah. So, I mean, I appreciate that Xenon is the antagonist, sure, but they're not the obvious villain. They're not maniacally rubbing their hands together and cackling and saying, "Yes, I'm going to take over the world." It's, you know, especially because Xenon used to be part of the Federation and then decided, no, we're going to declare independence.
Mm-hmm.
As an American, declaring your independence from a nation is usually a good thing. That's normally the hero of the story, right?
Right.
So that was another interesting switch it was the same as when I watched a TV series based on the literature character, the Scarlet Pimpernel.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a guy, there's talk that perhaps Zorro was actually based off of him.
Oh, wow.
Or that Batman was also loosely based, because it was an aristocrat who had an alter ego. And as that alter ego, he would go and rescue people. And in his story, the backdrop was France post-revolution.
I feel like I saw this on Wishbone once.
Wishbone might have had an episode about it. Yeah. What I saw was like a whole 10-part series or whatever on BBC.
Wow.
But well, BBC made it. I watched it on Netflix. But
far more scholarly than I am.
But it was interesting because in that story, the people who rose up against the elite and the aristocrats were the bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the people who didn't want kings anymore, they were the villains of the story. And what the Scarlet Pimpernel did was he would go and he would find people who were members of the royal family, people who were elitists that these revolutionaries were trying to, you know, cut off their heads.
Right.
And he was basically helping them escape France and get to Britain so that they could live better lives and not be hunted. And so that was an interesting flip to see the people fighting for independence being the bad guys. And you kind of get that vibe here as well. But again, not quite so much, because Xenon's painted as the antagonist, but not the villain. Char really is the only true villain of the story.
Right.
And that might change in the next movie. I don't know. But, you know, as it is right now, and again, normally I want my bad guys to be bad.
Right.
But this was a nice change. This was done in such a way that it was actually enjoyable.
Yeah, good, man. I'm glad. Well, let me ask you this. Are there any questions about what you saw that you think I might be able to clarify for you before we get into our final thoughts about the movie itself?
I don't think so. I did have one comment, and it's really the only thing I didn't like about the show. My only real complaint. Lieutenant Matilda.
Mm-hmm.
Armoro's like all starstruck for her.
Yes.
And they spend a lot of time talking about how starstruck he is for her.
Mm-hmm.
I'm guessing that's important later. I mean, it just seems kind of, and again, you know, we're watching a condensed version. Maybe in the series they explore that a little bit, but like they go out of their way to say Frau is interested in Amuro, and Amuro can't see it because he's too busy being starry-eyed at Lieutenant Matilda. It almost seemed like, hey, look at this. Amuro likes Matilda, and Frau doesn't like it. Look over here. Amuro likes Matilda, and Frau doesn't like it. Did you get that? Amuro likes Matilda, and Frau doesn't like it. That seems like a common thread, and I'm like, at the end of the movie, it doesn't go anywhere. Right. They don't do anything with it. So I don't know if maybe they address that in later movies or what.
Yeah, there's a little bit more conversation takes place that we don't see that takes place in the series itself. And you'll see a little bit more in the second movie. So some of that will flesh out just some of the weightiness of it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Branson, final thoughts about the movie before we go into our next section of the podcast. You know, what are your final thoughts about the movie? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Are you like, hey, I'm just done and I don't want to watch anymore?
No, quite the opposite. I'm interested to see how some of these plot points will play out. Part of me really wants to go back and watch the series to see all of those holes filled in.
Mm-hmm.
Because as I said, it was an information dump. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I could maybe process some of this a little bit better if I got it in little bite-sized pieces, you know. So I guess what I'd have to say is, as information heavy as this movie was, it did whet my appetite for the story. It did leave me, after taking a break, taking a nap, and resting for a bit, I did come back looking forward to the second movie. Like I don't feel done with the material. I want to go back and do this again. Kind of want to go back and watch the first movie again just to catch everything I missed the first time around. So
I totally get that. For me, I'm returning to this. I saw this. I've seen it a couple times. It's been several years since I've watched it last. I'm enjoying it. It reminds me of some of the magic and awe of Gundam, and I appreciate the roots of it. I appreciated the beauty of it. Like, I appreciate the fact that I could see the sketch lines in the art. There were scenes where you could actually see the texture of the paper that things were painted on in the background. I love when there's a texture, literally a texture to art. And
definitely,
and so 70s anime, again, it suffers from 70s storytelling, which is generally a very paced out, kind of slow storytelling, but it's beautiful to me. So I appreciate all that. And the story itself, again, I like political conversation. I like when there's plot twists and holes where you're like, oh wait, this person's here, but this person's here, and all of a sudden you have like a what do they call those? Like the CSI murder walls. You know what I'm talking about? Where there's like drawing strings everywhere, and there's a conspiracy theory. It's like, it's out there, right? Like, you can go there with this because you're starting to draw all these connections between all of these people, and it's super complicated. And the movie itself, it does justice, but there's so many things that would make much more sense if you had watched the series itself. But at the same time, there's so much filler. That I don't think the people would appreciate it. I would say it's worth a watch if you are getting into Gundam to have a base, because when I tell you, Branson, that so much is referenced to this movie, because again, this is kind of the starting point of what we call the Universal Century, which we talked about in the last episode. At the same time, there are elements of this that you see in other universes of Gundam. Great example, Gundam Seed I think we talked about this in the last podcast, the re-recording the last podcast. But there is a Trojan horse. The main protagonist gets into the Gundam basically a very similar way that Amuro gets into the Gundam. You have the escape to Earth, which was kind of a cool scene, and all that kind of stuff. In Gundam 00, there is I don't want to spoil the ending of it, but there is a reference, that very direct reference to this Gundam itself.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And again, moving forward, the Gundam machine has similar traits to this Gundam, where the blue, the yellow, and the white coating, and the horns and stuff like that. This kind of sets up a groundwork for everything. And so I feel like if you're getting into Gundam, if you're up for 70s style animation, check this out. I think it's fun. I think it's interesting. So it's a yes for me. Check it out. All right, cool. Well, that's our thoughts on it. And we're going to take a quick, small transition. And we're going to be back for what we're calling the maintenance report, where Branson and I are going to try to bring some encouragement using Mobile Suit Gundam, something that just kind of stuck out to us throughout the while watching it. So, back on the flip side.
Now loading the cruise maintenance reports. Reports begin in 3, 2, 1.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Gundam Watch. We have entered into the section of the show called the Maintenance Report, where Dallas and I take things that we noticed about this Gundam movie that we've seen, and we offer some encouragement based on it. And Dallas, earlier we were talking about the fact that Amuro oftentimes seems just so overwhelmed. The world is falling apart all around him. And I mentioned earlier when after one of his battles, people are trying to congratulate him, and he's just done. He's like, leave me alone. I don't care. And he just wants to go in his bedroom and cry. And ultimately, I believe it's Frau that goes in and brings him back out and says, hey, you need to snap out of this. We need you here now.
Right.
One of the things I notice about Amuro is that his pride will not allow him to be dependent on other people. He's having some serious mental breakdown, as you called it, PTSD level stuff going on in his head.
Yeah.
And he's not talking to anyone. He's not opening up to anyone. He's not smiling at anyone. He's not offering anything to anyone. Matter of fact, I think that's one of the reasons why Frau doesn't like Lieutenant Matilda, because when Lieutenant Matilda shows up, that's the first time the dude is happy about anything.
Right.
you know, and poor Frau has been trying to be there for him the entire movie. You know, let me talk to you, let me be there for you, let me help you, that kind of thing. And he's having none of it. And I think that's very convicting, not just as Christians, but for you and I as men. You know, as men, we have to put off this air of we've got it all together, we've got it all figured out, we're tough, we can take it. As Christians, there's this temptation to say, well, because I have faith in Christ, because I believe in Jesus, because I believe God's got my back and God's going to take care of everything, I shouldn't have to worry about anything, and I should be all smiles. And if I'm not happy, then I'm sinning because I'm not putting enough faith in God. And so we have this temptation to squirrel away and hide and not share our struggles, to, you know, put out this facade, especially in like social media. You know, we love to tell everybody about our happy days and tell nobody about our sad days. And I see that in Amuro. He will not rely on other people at all. And I should have looked it up before the start of the show, but you know, I didn't think about that until now. But the verse that talks about bearing each other's burdens in love.
Yeah.
You know, being part of the Christian family means that there is a family.
Right.
As one of my former pastors used to say, there's no such thing as a Lone Ranger Christian. You know, the whole thing of it's just me and God and that's all I need. That's not the way God designed us. He designed us to be in community. And the reason he designed us to be in community is so we can lift up each other and encourage each other. And that was something that Amuro at first did not utilize. Now, as the movie goes on, he opens up a little bit more, and he allows Frau to comfort him, and he starts building those friendships with the other members of the team. But as a follower of Christ and as a man, we have to be willing to say, there are some areas in my life where I don't have things figured out. There are some areas in my life where I'm struggling. There are some areas in my life where I need help.
Yeah.
And I think it's important as disciples of Christ to be willing to admit that, to be open about that, so we can get the help that we need. We can get the encouragement that we need. And we don't have these PTSD level events where the world is crashing in and all we want to do is curl up on our bed and cry.
Right.
And so that was something I drew out of this movie as I was watching, that Amuro is actually a cautionary tale of what happens when you don't depend on people the way that
Man,
you should.
that's so good. That's so good. And it's something that I really feel like, I mean, you hit it. We've all dealt with this as men. We've dealt with this. I know I've dealt with that at times where like, I've got to do this. Some of it comes from a place of like, we've been hurt before because we trusted other people. We said, hey, I'm trusting you to help me. And they've let us down, unfortunately.
Mhm.
And I think the big challenge for us is to go, let me walk this out still.
Right.
Let me, I know I've been hurt, but let me still trust that this is going to take place,
Mhm.
which is hard.
Yes, absolutely.
That's good. So for me, mine is coming from right after they enter into Earth orbit. They're coming out the back end of this crazy battle. Amuro has survived miraculously. Nobody expected the Gundam to survive the reentry process. Char is losing his mind because he's lost another man, which is interesting because that again goes to the whole point of like he seems to have care for his men that serve with him, but not at the same time. That's in the conversation. But they're coming out, they're reentering, and they've lost communications with Amuro, and all of a sudden it all comes back. They see Gundam flying in the air, not flying, falling, but there's a sense of okay. And then it cuts to the people in the ship itself in White Base, and they're looking out and they see Earth. They see the sun, they see the clouds, they see the grass, the water, and there's a little kid going that's just in awe. It's like, is that real? And this old man's like, I forget, you've never seen this.
Wow.
You've
yeah.
never seen Earth. You've never seen the creation that's here before us.
Mhm.
They're used to the artificial, and that's all they have.
Yeah.
And my encouragement for us is that when we get out of rough times, because rough times take place, where and maybe it's not a bad thing, maybe we're just busy, we're going, we have to stop, and we have to take pause and just recognize what's around us, be thankful for what's before us. Psalms chapter 33 verse 8 says, let all the earth fear the Lord, let all the inhabitants of the world stand in awe of him. And standing in awe of him means a lot of things. It means the whole aspect of who he is, but also what he's created. The world around us, I mean, we are so perfectly placed in space. Like we've heard it before, if the earth was positioned just a few hundred feet away from the sun, we'd freeze, and too close, we'd burn.
Right.
That's not a few hundred. Your dad would be angry at me for not giving the right numbers. I apologize, Mr. Boykin. But just slightly out of place, and we burn or freeze. Just, if the atmosphere is just off, we can't breathe. And it's a wonder and an awe that we have that he created things so perfectly for us. And we need to take the time to stand in all those things. I'm reminded of Jesus whenever he just finds out that his cousin had died, John the Baptist, and it's a horrific thing. And Jesus is on his way to get away to pray. Now he stops. He has compassion for people. He takes care of people, take care of the things that he needs to take care of. But once the moment's done, he goes off to pray, gets off to just stand in awe and wonder of the Lord and what the Lord has for him. We have to do that as individuals.
Mhm.
We sometimes just have to stop and take care of ourselves and go, thank you
Yeah.
that I have this moment and that I have these things in front of me.
Amen.
So that's my encouragement.
Amen. I concur wholeheartedly.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Branson, I believe that is the closing of our very first episode of the Gundam Watch.
All right.
So
Very cool.
we survived. Hopefully this report going to the High Council of Planet Geekery is received well and that they like it.
Well, the fact that I took my mask off is probably going to help that.
It's going to help a lot. Big points for you, buddy.
Yeah. Now that I understand the association, yeah, I do not want to be a Shar. Red Comet bad. Gotcha.
So, but hey, for those of you guys who are listening out there, what did you think of the show? What did you think of the first Gundam movie? Do you like it? Do you not like it? We want to hear from you guys. Reach out to us. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram. Just look for the Gundam Watch. We pop up really easily, and leave comments, private messages. We want to do live with you guys. We want this to be a community where we're discovering Gundam together because it's fun. I think it's fun. Branson, did you have fun? Blink twice if you're not having fun. Nobody can see you, Branson. This is a podcast.
No, I had an absolute blast. I'm very excited to get steeped into this. I figured I would enjoy it to an extent anyway, because I like sci-fi stuff.
Right.
But I enjoyed it a lot more than I expected to. So I'm very eager to move on to the next stage.
Awesome. Our next episode is called movie is called Mobile Suit Gundam 2 Soldiers of Sorrow.
Oh, great. Okay.
Get your tissue. So awesome. All right. Well, guys, before we head out, we do want to give a special thank you to John Haryu. Our theme song was written and produced by John and used with permission for this show. That being said, Gundam fans and those who are thinking about it, until next time, stay devoted.
Peace and love.